West Memphis, Arkansas, May 5, 1993. What began as an ordinary day for the families in this small town soon turned into a nightmare. 3 8-year-old boys Stevie Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers were reported missing after they failed to return home. As the sun began to set, worry spread throughout the community, and search efforts quickly intensified. The following day, the lifeless bodies of the 3 boys were found in a nearby wooded area known as Robin Hood Hills. What was initially suspected to be an isolated tragedy soon spiraled into one of the most controversial and debated criminal cases in American history, the case of the West Memphis 3.
Missing in West Memphis, Arkansas. Their families frantically searching a wooded area near their homes. Pam Hobbs and her husband Terry among them. But Pam held little hope for her son Stevie Branch.
I told Terry, I said, he's dead. I said, I'll never see him alive again, and I was crying. And he said, no, Pam, don't say that. It's gonna be all right, we're gonna find him.
Terry Hobbs was right. They did find Stevie. But Pam was right too. She'd never see her son alive again. A shoe. 2 bikes. And Stevie Branch with his 2 friends, Christopher Byers and Michael Moore. The boys were new and bound with their own shoelaces.
I run up there, and one look at my ex-husband, I knew it was Stevie. And I hit the ground screaming, God, no.
Almost immediately, word spread that these murders were the work of the devil.
That was the first thing that everybody started saying, that it was a ritualistic killing, satanic killing. I overheard people saying that they've been trying to let the police know that there's been groups of teenagers out there practicing satanic rituals and things like that.
Satanic killing? An idea not so far-fetched for the time. This is a community steeped in religion. A church is never far away. And it was a time before the goth look or the notion of a romantic teenage vampire became fashionable. And this was a crime so horrendous, it was easy to believe it was committed by a monster. When you're hearing all of this, what's going through your mind?
That exactly the same thing, that's what happened, that the devil actually come and got my baby. Everybody was a suspect. I would have thought you did it back then. I mean, anybody I looked at, I was mad at. I went into a world of my own, and I hated people.
Damien Eccles tells me he was also in his own world.
The 3 8-year-old boys
just beginning, he says, to hear about the 3 young boys found in West Memphis.
Investigators found the children.
The morning of May 6, 1993, brought a grim discovery. In a secluded section of Robin Hood Hills, the 3 missing boys were found submerged in a creek, their bodies tied with their own shoelaces. The horrific nature of the crime was immediately apparent. Each boy had been beaten, and one of the victims, Christopher Byers, showed signs of extreme mutilation. The brutality of the crime shocked the local police and residents alike. The investigation quickly shifted from a search and rescue mission to a full-blown murder investigation. But as authorities scrambled to find answers, suspicion began to fall on an unlikely group of suspects: 3 local teenagers, known as the West Memphis 3.
From the center of the crime scene, I'm going to make a full 360-degree pan of the area. The noise you hear is tractor and trailers at the Blue Beacon truck wash. Once again, the trail at Turtle Hill. The view of the ditch where the bodies were found. Note the sandbags at the far north end of the area. The marking on the tree. And the sandbags at the south end of the area. This is some lattice work found on the hill southeast of the crime scene. View of the crime scene from the southeast. This is from the north looking south at the possible crime scene. This is a view of the east bank. This is a well-used trail from the area going west.
Damian Eccles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miskelly were local teenagers living on the fringes of society in West Memphis. They were known for their interest in heavy metal music, horror films, and what some described as nonconformist behavior. Within a month of the murders, police focused their investigation on these three teenagers, believing they were involved in satanic rituals due to the bizarre nature of the crime. Jesse Miskelly, who had a low IQ, was interrogated by police for hours without a lawyer present. During this intense questioning, Jesse gave a confession implicating himself, Damian, and Jason in the murders. However, much of his confession was riddled with inconsistencies, leading many to question its validity. Despite this, the three teenagers were arrested and charged with the murders of the boys.
Boys in West Memphis, Arkansas began on February 28, 1994.
Crowds around the courthouses were irate, and they believed that these were three kids who, in some kind of ritual involving Satan, had murdered and mutilated 3 8-year-old boys.
Mara Leverett wrote The Devil's Knot, the true story of the West Memphis Three. She questions the strength of the prosecution's case.
They had very little to go on and to present to the jury. And so they made the decision that they were going to say that this was an occult slaying, and that's why it all happened, because these guys were dabbling in the occult. And they brought in an expert witness, they said, named Dr. Dale Griffiths, and he was going to be their expert in the occult.
Mara Leverett wrote The Devil's Knot, the true story of the West Memphis Three. She questions the strength of the prosecution's case.
They had very little to go on and to present to the jury. And so they made the decision that they were going to say that this was an occult slaying, and that's why it all happened, because these guys were dabbling in the occult. And they brought in an expert witness, they said, named Dr. Dale Griffiths, and he was going to be their expert in the occult.
Dennis Reardon is Damien's attorney.
This is a man who has a PhD from a diploma mill in California, parading as an expert in this field, when the FBI has looked at this and said this whole satanic thing is utterly unfounded.
Griffiths.
I always felt like if these people were stupid enough to look at me in that way, then mess with them, play on their fears. I would have thought it was funny.
Well, just watching you back then, you came across, I think one of the more kind words would be arrogant.
I was a kid and I was scared out of my mind, so my strategy for dealing with that fear was to pretend that I wasn't. I don't think there was any way I could have behaved, any way I could have dressed, anything I could have said that would have changed anything going on in that courtroom. I think they were absolutely determined, no matter what, to convict us of this crime.
It wasn't just Damien's courtroom antics. Remember, prosecutors also had that knife found in the lake behind Jason Baldwin's home. But even this bit of evidence cut both ways.
I think the knife that was pulled out of the lake is a problem because it had no provenance. There was nothing showing
Guilty of killing Stevie Branch, Christopher Byers, and Michael Moore.
We, the jury, find Damien Eccles guilty of capital murder.
Getting accused killers off the street was a big, huge relief to people. And then trying them and convicting them it just sealed that relief.
I feel wonderful at this point. I feel like we have definitely been vindicated in this case.
Now my boy can play and go on about his life in heaven the way it is, and I'll go on with mine the best I can.
What are you going to say to your son?
Son, we won. And wait till Mama gets up there, and we'll have a good time when I get there with you. I'm glad it's over.
Jason was sentenced to life in prison. Damien was dealt with even more severely. He was sent to Arkansas's death row.
The trial of the West Memphis Three began in early 1994, and it quickly became a national spectacle. The media frenzy surrounding the case was fueled by the perception that the murders were connected to satanic rituals, a fear that was widespread at the time due to the satanic panic of the 1980s and early 90s. Prosecutors painted a picture of Damien Eccles as the ringleader, alleging that he had orchestrated the murders as part of a cult ritual. Jesse Miskelly's confession was central to the prosecution's case, despite the fact that he had recanted it shortly after. The defense argued that there was no physical evidence linking the teenagers to the crime and that the confession was coerced. But the jury was swayed by the prosecution's narrative, and on March 19, 1994, Damien Eccles was sentenced to death, while Jason Baldwin and Jesse Miskelly received life sentences without parole.
Now, let me refer you back to your statement that you gave Officer Ridge. Did you tell him in that statement that you had been a member of a white witch group for 5 years?
No.
Okay.
I've never been a member of any group.
And so if he put that in his report, you're saying that's inaccurate?
Yes, I am.
He made that up?
Yes, I am.
On question number 9, how do you think the person feels that did this? The answer was probably makes them feel good, gives them power. Now, I guess Officer Ridge said that too.
No, I use common sense on that.
Okay.
If someone was doing it, then they must have wanted to. And if they were doing something they wanted to, it must have made them happy. I don't think they were doing it because someone forced them to or because they didn't want to.
So in your mind, the person that killed these 3 kids, it's common sense that killing 3 8-year-olds would make you feel good?
Whoever did it, it must have.
Did you also tell him that each person had a demonic side to them?
I believe every person has a good side and a bad side, yes.
Well, were those your words when you referred, when he's got written down here, he stated that there was no control of the demonic portion of people?
He asked me, did I think there were some people that could not control that side? I said, yes, I guess there is.
It also states that Damien stated that the younger the victim would be more innocent, and in turn more power would be given the person doing the killing.
Right.
Okay. Did you say that?
Yes.
Okay, those are your words.
Mm-hmm.
Did you pick that up when you were studying to be a Catholic?
No. I saw that on several movies, books.
Question number 11, when he asked you, how do you think they died? And its answer is mutilation, cut up all three, heard they were in the water drowning, cut up one more than the others. Is that, again, what Officer Ridge said and you just agreed?
No, I had saw that on TV, newspapers, people talking.
And you knew it about the drowning, correct?
I knew they were in the water. I didn't know that they drowned.
You knew that one was cut up more than the others?
He asked me, was it possible? He said, do you think one was hurt worse than the others? I said, yeah, I guess.
So again, that particular area is one of those things where Officer Ridge told you, and that wasn't your response. You just responded about the drowning and mutilation.
If he didn't get the answer he liked, he would go back and try to get me to say something else.
And it's your testimony specifically that you aren't the one who said one was cut up more than the other,
no,
that it was Officer Ridge who said that?
I agreed with him when he said that.
Okay. And if he says something different, he'd be lying about it, right? You're the one telling the truth.
I wouldn't.
What do you think?
I think I did real good the first day. The second day, it didn't look as good because Davis kept trying to trip me up or something.
There was one point in there, though, where he asked you, he says, it looks like you're just changing your story to fit whatever comes up. And you said, yeah.
I was just like halfway listening to him. After I was real nervous when I first got up there, enough to keep my attention focused and everything. But after I was up there a few minutes, just started daydreaming.
Daydream. Maybe they'll only halfway.
Why we didn't want you to testify?
Yeah.
And you see how it hurt Damien? I think it did. And you see how they talked about his witnesses?
Mm-hmm.
See, they didn't have anything to talk about us. They didn't have anything to talk about because we didn't give them a chance. And, oh man, it's heavy. Do you think that this will change at all? How you choose your friends?
Yeah.
What do you think this would do? What do you think this is going to do to you and Damien, you and your friendship with Damien?
Stop it, I guess.
Would you stop being his friend?
I wouldn't be his enemy, but after this, we probably wouldn't be around or nothing.
You heard what was said about him. Do you think you could have done it?
About what they said?
Yeah, do you think he could have? Do you think Damien could have killed those little boys?
They made it seem like he did.
I knew from when I was real small that people were going to know who I was. I always had that feeling. But I just never knew how they were going to learn. I kind of enjoy it because now, even after I die, people are going to remember me forever. They're going to talk about me for years. People in West Memphis will tell their kids stories. It'll be like, sort of like I'm the West Memphis boogeyman. Little kids will be...
Even after the verdict was delivered, doubts about the guilt of the West Memphis Three persisted. Many believed that the teenagers had been wrongfully convicted due to the lack of physical evidence and the questionable nature of Miskelly's confession. Over the years, new evidence began to emerge that cast further doubt on their guilt. In the early 2000s, DNA testing showed that none of the genetic material found at the crime scene matched Damien, Jason, or Jesse. In fact, some of the DNA pointed to other possible suspects. This new evidence reignited public interest in the case, and a growing number of people both within the legal community and the general public began to advocate for the release of the West Memphis Three. In the years following their conviction, a movement to free the West Memphis Three gained momentum. Documentaries such as Paradise Lost brought national attention to the case, highlighting the questionable evidence and suggesting that the real killers were still at large. Celebrities, legal experts, and everyday citizens alike joined the fight for their release. After nearly 2 decades of legal battles, in 2011, the West Memphis Three were offered an unusual deal known as an Alford plea, which allowed them to maintain their innocence while acknowledging that the state had enough evidence to convict them. On August 19, 2011, Damian Eccles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miskelly were released from prison after serving 18 years for a crime they insisted they did not commit.
I believe with all my heart and all my soul that the day is coming whenever we will see justice and we'll walk out of this place. It may not come tomorrow, it may not come on September 30th, but it will come.
Tonight, Damian Eccles and the West Memphis Three might be one step closer to proving their innocence.
That video you just heard was Eccles in 2010, right before he, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miskelly took what's called an Alford plea deal.
It allowed them to maintain their innocence while accepting that the prosecutors had enough evidence to convict them of killing 3 boys in West Memphis back in 1993.
Once that additional DNA testing started pointing in different directions than the 3, then we first started to have real hope that maybe there was a way this case would break open.
Damian Eccles' lead counsel, Stephen Braga, has been on the case since 2009. Right before Eccles, Jason Baldwin and Jesse Miskelly made an Alford plea deal.
I haven't been involved in another case, anything like this in my career. Believe me, this is one of a kind, a really dramatic case in terms of, as Judge Laser said at the Alford plea hearing, it's a tragedy on all sides.
Eccles has maintained his innocence since, pushing for justice in the case. And that push came closer to reality in 2021 when evidence thought to have been destroyed was found. Eccles and his legal team want to test it for DNA to see if they can identify who was at the crime scene. But when they took it to court in 2022, a Crittenden County Circuit judge said no, and that the petition they filed under was not applicable in this case because Eccles wasn't in state custody. 2 years later, the Arkansas Supreme Court weighed in on the decision. In a 4-3 majority opinion, the justices say Eccles can test the evidence with this law, and he does not need to be in state custody to seek relief to prove his innocence.
We're going to take the high road and respect both sides, and luckily we won. We're able to go back and have jurisdiction in the circuit court over the petition for new testing. And what I would say to anybody who believes that the West Memphis Three, who still believes that the West Memphis Three committed this crime or Damian is some kind of depraved criminal, well, let's let the testing be done.
Something Eccles and his team have been working on for years, and they say they are closer now than ever to finally knowing the truth.
He really hopes that there's a way to expeditiously get this evidence tested. He has no fear of what the evidence might show, but he is still hopeful that someday the real perpetrator will be found.
The story of the West Memphis Three is one of tragedy, injustice, and perseverance. For the families of Stevie Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers, the pain of losing their sons remains as strong as ever, with no definitive answers as to who was truly responsible for the murders. For Damian Eccles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miskelly, their release marked the end of a long, grueling fight for justice. But while they may be free, the scars of their wrongful imprisonment will never fully heal. The West Memphis Three case remains a haunting reminder of the fallibility of the justice system and the importance of always seeking the truth.